This video is sponsored by Tupelodesignsllc, where U.S. shipping is always free with no minimum purchase and international shipping is discounted. They are also home of the daily deals, so be sure to check that out on their website. They also have a great reward program, so be sure to sign up for that. For today's project, I'll be watercoloring a card with watercolor paint, and this is a My Favorite Things stamp set, and it's called Your Rawr-some. And this is a card panel, and it is 5 inches by 3 1/4, and I'm going to put that in my stamping tool. This stamp set has some really cute cartoony type dinosaurs, and I'll be using 2 dinosaurs. I'll be using what I believe is a T-Rex. It has little arms, so it must be a T-Rex. And then I'll be using the other dinosaur. I believe that is a Triceratops. Now, I could be wrong here. I am not a dinosaur expert. But this card is going to be for my 3-year-old grandson's birthday. And I'm laying them out there on that little piece of cardstock that's 5 inches by 3 1/4. And I'm getting them where I want them. I will be embossing these dinosaurs, so I'm using some black ink that stays sticky. I will link a black ink down below that you can use. And I will be stamping that on the cardstock, and then I'm going to take extra fine clear embossing powder, and I will be embossing each dinosaur one at a time. And that's the clear embossing powder, and I'm just sprinkling that on directly onto the dinosaur. I'm using a generous amount to make sure that I get the black ink all covered, and then I will hit that with my heat embossing tool. Before I melt that embossing powder, I'm going to clean it up a little bit with a brush, and I'm just getting any extra little tidbits of that heat embossing powder off. And this is the fun part. This is where you get to see the embossing powder melt, and I really like that. It's really fun. So I warmed up my heat gun first, and now I'm going over the dinosaur, and then I will also hit the back of the cardstock a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with this Triceratops dinosaur as I did with the T-Rex. I'm going to create a mask of that Triceratops with some post-it. That's a post-it note. So I'm going to stamp that Triceratops on the post-it note, and I'm going to partially cut it out because I only need that back section of the dinosaur. And there's the mask of the dinosaur, and I'm doing this because I want to stamp that cute little palm tree, but I want it like it's hidden behind the dinosaur. So I'm placing the palm tree where I want it, and I will also stamp that out in some sticky black ink, and then I will emboss it. Once everything's embossed, I'm going to paint this with watercolor paint. And the watercolor paint I'm using today is one of my favorite watercolor paints. And that's the Gansai Tambi watercolor paint set. And I love these colors because they're vibrant and they stay vibrant even after they dry. Whereas some watercolor paints tend to fade a lot. These fade just a teeny tiny little bit, but they still stay nice and bright. So I'm going to pick out the colors I want to use, and I'm taking out the pans so I don't have to have that big palette of colors on my desk. And I'm just using some watercolor brushes. And I forgot to mention that this is just plain old cardstock. It is not watercolor paper. And you can watercolor paint on cardstock as long as you don't scrub hard. It works just fine for little, pictures. I wouldn't paint art piece on cardstock, but just for something like this, it works just fine. So I'll be using some various colors, and because I heat embossed all of this image, it's easy to watercolor because the color isn't going to get anywhere that you don't want it to go. It's kind of like coloring in the lines, but you can't go out of the lines because they're raised a little bit. I'll just keep watercoloring this using various colors and a nice wet brush, not too wet, not super soggy, but wet enough. And then I'll show you what it looks like when I get done painting it. I'm all done painting it, and because it was wet, and watercolor paper will do this too, it gets kind of warpy. So the trick I use to make this dry faster and to make it so it's not so crinkly is I'm actually going to iron this with an iron. So I have a cutting board on my work table, and that's a piece of computer paper, and I'm just slipping that painted card front right in between that piece of paper. And that's a Heidi Swap mini iron. Tupelo does not carry this mini iron. I found it at a garage sale for $1. So I had to get it. I don't even know if they make it anymore. But look how nice and straight that is. And I'll give it one more little hit there just to get a few of the edges wavy. It's kind of wavy on the edges yet. And that'll make my card front nice and straight so it's not all bumpy. And it's also going to dry it too, so I didn't have to wait for the cardstock to dry. But there it is, all finished. And now I'm taking a piece of pattern paper, and it looked like grass pattern paper, and I used my Lawn Fawn grass dye, and I cut a strip out of that grass dye, and I'm using my art glitter glue to glue on the grass to the bottom of the card. And now that that card front is finished, I am actually going to glue that onto a separate piece of cardstock, just a plain blue cardstock. And that cardstock will be 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And I'm using my Tombow adhesive dot runner. This is my favorite tape runner because it's dot, so you don't get that long stringy glue, and it doesn't bind up on you. It doesn't roll up into itself. And that's my card panel, and I'm just going to glue that on there, and then I will use that same adhesive tape runner to glue that completed piece onto a standard A2 size card base. And then from the stamp set, I am going to use the sentiment Have a Dynamite Birthday, and I'm going to stamp that onto a white strip of cardstock. I'm not going to emboss that, but I'm just going to keep it super simple and just stamp it onto that strip of cardstock. And there's that cute little sentiment, and I'm just going to tape that onto, or glue that onto the front of the card, and I'll use that tape runner after I trim the ends. I'll use that same tape runner to glue it to the front of the card. And the card is finished. I'm pretty sure my grandson will really like this card, and then I'll put his name and happy birthday on the inside. So as always, there are links down below to the products I used except for the iron, because I got that at a garage sale. So thanks for watching. Bye.